Event. Unplug Salem is sponsoring this event, and I guess I must start with a plug for Norm Cohen. I've worked with him for 7 years during my time at UCS. None of the people I work with can match Norm's combination of persistence, craftiness, and capability. He stays on things like a bulldog, and by the way, I do know I owe you that tritium petition. I'll get to it as soon as I get back. Actually, the people of this region are very fortunate to have Norm Cohen on their side. I'd like to talk to you a few minutes about safety culture to lay a foundation for our next speaker. During my 7 years at UCS, this is one of my best jobs, is to introduce our next speaker. But I'll get to that in just a minute. What is safety culture? The NRC defines it a number of ways. Perhaps the easiest would be that safety culture includes a questioning attitude, conservative decision-making, attention to detail, personnel accountability, and adherence to procedures. Fairly basic, simple stuff. Why is safety culture important? Well, 25 years ago today, we got an example of what happens when you don't have good safety culture. The Presidential Commission that was appointed to investigate the 3 Mile Island accident and its causes concluded that safety culture played a key role in that accident. They said, quote, after many years of operation of nuclear power plants with no evidence that any member of the public has been hurt, the belief that nuclear power plants are sufficiently safe grew into a conviction. One must recognize this to understand why many steps that could have been taken to prevent the accident at 3 Mile Island were not taken. This attitude must be changed to one that says that nuclear power by its very nature is potentially dangerous, and therefore one must continually question whether the safeguards already in place are sufficient to prevent major accidents. A comprehensive system is required in which equipment and human beings are treated with equal importance, end quote. 25 years after TMI, after that accident, equipment and human beings in nuclear power plants are not getting treated with sufficient attention. An example that we purchased a few years ago in Connecticut at the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant, where the NRC required those reactors to be shut down for 2 years while its safety culture was fixed. Among the reasons or the evidence that the NRC cited of bad safety culture at Millstone were a large number of allegations. Those are complaints by workers to the NRC instead of the plant's owner. Many of the plant owner's employees believed that the managers responsible for fixing problems were in fact getting bonuses for not fixing problems. Management frequently identified problems but didn't fix them. Management was reluctant to admit mistakes, and the managers lacked skill in handling concerns and were generally not supportive of employees raising concerns. The problems at Millstone put the plant on a cover of Time magazine, and not for a good thing. Late last year, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission did not allow the Davis-Besse plant in Ohio to restart. The equipment at the plant had been fixed, the safety margins had been restored, but the safety culture was still broken. And the NRC did not allow that plant to restart with a bad safety culture. The plant's owner itself conceded that it had a bad safety culture. Among the things they reported was that over time the plant appeared to become complacent. In many areas, a minimum compliance standard existed in management and thus throughout the Davis-Besse organization. In other words, they weren't trying to make things better, they were just trying to band-aid things over to get by. At Millstone, the workers who raised safety issues faced illegal retaliation. They were fired and harassed for raising safety issues. At Davis-Besse, it was a little bit different. Workers who raised safety issues found deaf ears. Management didn't want to hear the concerns. They weren't fired, they were just ignored. The bottom line for both plants was that safety problems were known but tolerated. They weren't fixed. I often hear that safety culture problems occur because plant owners are greedy. They put profits ahead of safety. But in some respects, if that's their goal, they're not very good at that either. Because Millstone cost the company close to $1 billion. Davis-Besse cost its owner $600 million. 3 Mile Island, in 30 minutes, 3 Mile Island was turned from a $470 million asset into a $1 billion liability. The plant never operated again. So plant owners are putting profit ahead of safety. They're not good at either safety or profit making. So what really allows things to get so bad at these plants that neither profits nor safety are being well served? I think the best explanation I've ever seen is in a book called The Challenger Launch Decision: Risky Technology, Culture, and Deviance at NASA, about the first space shuttle disaster. The author of that book pointed out that the O-ring problem that caused that shuttle to blow up shortly after launch had actually been around for a while. In fact, that happened in 1986. Of the 9 shuttle flights that were launched in 1985, the year before, 7 of them also had O-ring problems. But because these problems didn't result in tragedy, the culture was, must be okay. It's annoying, but we're not going to fix it because it's not resulting in a shuttle disaster. Until January 1986, when another O-ring failure caused the shuttle to blow up. The author of that book titled that process The Normalization of Deviance, where things that aren't supposed to go right happen so frequently that they become tolerated. Abnormal becomes normal. Wrong becomes right. Nothing ever gets fixed because nothing's ever bad enough to suggest a disaster. So management says that we must be doing okay. The plant didn't blow up yesterday. That works for a while, and only for a while. If you look at the 3 Mile Island accident that happened 25 years ago today, all of the problems, every single one of them that contributed to that accident, had occurred at that plant in the year before. When the problems happened, they were just tolerated because they happened individually. People say, well, it's annoying, but we can live with it. And then 25 years ago today, a number of those problems occurred at the same time and caused a meltdown and evacuation of close to 150,000 people. This pattern was repeated at Millstone and Davis-Besse, unfortunately without the final chapter on meltdown. Literally dozens of warning signs were ignored by the plant's owner and by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, allowing huge gaping holes in the safety nets to be cut over a period of years. The fact that it took more than 2 years to fix the safety nets at these plants shows just how bad things got at those facilities. It's often said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Sadly, that appears to apply today to Salem and Hope Creek nuclear plants. These reactors are literally just down the road from here. PSE&G management is figuratively steering those reactors down the same road that Millstone, Davis-Besse, and 3 Mile Island went. Those journeys were unsafe and uneconomical. It makes no sense for PSE&G management to be on those roads today. But they are on that road. They've been on that road for some time. About a year ago, our next speaker worked at Salem and Hope Creek. She communicated warnings to senior management about equipment problems at the plants. She advised senior management about problems with the methods used at Salem and Hope Creek to find and fix safety issues. But senior management didn't want to hear it. They fired her in response to her raising those concerns. The only way that management can proceed along a road that is unsafe and uneconomical towards a destination that spells disaster is to blind themselves to all road signs and deafen themselves to all warnings, which is exactly what they did. Our next speaker worked at PSE&G Nuclear for 5 years, not as somebody who cared for the equipment itself, but as somebody who cared for the people at the facility. As a direct report to the PSE&G nuclear president, she focused on long-standing people and leadership issues at the station that contributed to mediocre performance over the prior 20 years. While working at Hope Creek and Salem, she received awards from PSE&G for her innovative leadership, coaching initiatives, and contributions. She fought for the people of Salem and Hope Creek, wanting them to be respected, valued, and heard. When she took on voicing safety concerns of operators and the management team to the chief nuclear officer and the chairman of the board of PSE&G, she was fired and rushed out the door. Unceremoniously and illegally, PSE&G executives discarded one of their best early warning systems, someone with the courage and commitment to bring safety issues forward to the attentions of the leaders that needed to know that information. It speaks volumes that workers who did not trust the Employee Concerns Program at the plant and senior management at the plant trusted her to champion their safety concerns. But instead of praising Dr. Harvin for putting safety and people first, PSE&G showed her the door. It silenced her, or at least they thought they silenced her, and sent a very loud message for the people of Salem and Hope Creek to keep their mouths shut or suffer the same fate. PSE&G compounded its error by labeling Dr. Harvin a disgruntled employee. What company executives failed to realize is that Dr. Harvin remains committed to the mission she undertook 6 years ago when she came to Hope Creek in Salem, to have this site be a safe and great place for people to work. Had PSE&G listened to Dr. Harvin instead of firing her, things would be much better at the plant today. Workers would be heard instead of ignored. Many safety issues would already have been corrected instead of being on the list still to be fixed. The site's safety culture would be improving instead of declining. Just 10 days ago, PSE&G executives finally admitted to the NRC that the site's safety culture problems are very deep and not easily fixed. These are many of the same problems that Dr. Harvin brought to their attention over a year ago and was fired for doing so. Hopefully PSE&G is listening now. After all, the best way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today a talented, capable, and caring leader, Dr. Kym Harvin.
Good afternoon. I'm grateful that so many of you are here. I'd like to begin with a moment of silence for all the people across the world who work at nuclear plants and for the people who regulate them, that they have the courage to always put safety first. It's a wonder there hasn't been an accident there worse than TMI. All the ingredients are sure lined up for that to happen. Those words are about the Salem and Hope Creek nuclear generating stations at the end of this access road. They were spoken to me about a month ago by a respected operator with over 20 years of experience at the site. His words concerned me greatly and prompted me to accept the invitation to speak at this rally. Frankly, I never wanted this day to come. I am telling my story publicly today for the very first time because I believe I must. I believe it is my duty to inform you, the people of this community, and the public, and enlist your help in averting another 3 Mile Island nuclear accident, or worse, from happening at Salem and Hope Creek. Today is a difficult anniversary for me. It marks both the TMI crisis and my own crisis, the end of my career at PSEG Nuclear. I am thankful that neither were a full meltdown for the Corps at TMI or for me. Both provide a line of demarcation, an event that we can look to for lessons we can learn from and hopefully never repeat. In 1979, I lived just 20 miles from TMI. I was Governor Dick Thornburg's education speechwriter at the time. I knew nothing about the nuclear industry or how it would change my life. I never expected 25 years later to be speaking at a TMI anniversary rally. Earlier this year, I met again with Dick Thornburg. We talked about TMI. We recalled how both the utility and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had misled everyone about the events there. From that experience, he shared with me that he learned 3 things. There's a time to go to the top, a time to ask for help, and a time to communicate truthfully to the people. Those are my intentions today. I now know much more about the nuclear industry. As Dave said, I spent 5 years at the Salem and Hope Creek nuclear generating stations. I have also consulted for top-rated nuclear facilities. I believe in well-run, well-led nuclear plants where safety and people are number one. I came to the site down the road 6 years ago in March of 1998. I was then, and still am today, committed to helping make this nuclear site a safe and great place for people to work. For a time, we made progress. Morale and results improved. We had 4 best year evers in a row. Safety and people were getting attention. It was like the people and the plants were recovering well from harsh management and the extended shutdowns of the 90s. As the organization development specialist and a direct report to the president and chief nuclear officer, I introduced some new ways of thinking into this highly technical organization. Relationships determine results was initially a foreign concept that frankly had people ask, what planet is she from? And then when word got out that I had written a book entitled Bringing Love Back into Business, some were certain I belonged with the flower children of the 60s, certainly not at a nuclear power plant. The self-proclaimed arrogant, cocky, and aloof technocrats did their best to keep me at bay. I fought hard to win them over, to make a difference, and eventually did. They began to realize the power of their presence, their words, and their actions to bring out the best in people, not just the equipment. One of the proudest days of my career was receiving a top leadership award from PSEG, given only to a few of the company's 13,000 people. In late 2002, my dreams began turning to nightmares. I saw the decline at Salem and Hope Creek begin, and then snowball. I tried my best to intervene, but I was not successful. A Cold War ensued between senior management, operators, and plant personnel. Vice presidents were feuding with each other. Unionized workers watched as management waged war with management. People in the middle, who often worked 80, 90 hours a week just to keep things running, couldn't win anywhere. We were quickly losing the ground we had taken. From my vantage point, production pressure was at an all-time high, especially when revenues of $3 million a day were at stake. This pressure was coming from the highest levels of the enterprise, I was told. It seemed that all that mattered was the bottom line. Jobs were threatened. Fear and dread were rampant. And it got so bad that workers and managers alike were telling me we were dangerous, and they were afraid the NRC was going to take the keys away. They told me they feared a nuclear accident, or someone being seriously killed, seriously hurt, or even killed. I urged them to speak up, speak out. Even high-level leaders were afraid to do so. They didn't want to risk being out of favor or losing their 6-figure jobs and having to uproot their families. I chose to speak up for them. After all, that was part of my job. Keep my boss, the chief nuclear officer, informed. He needed to know about these alarming safety issues. And if others weren't going to tell him, I would. But he didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear what had to be said. Nor, frankly, did his boss, the chairman of the board, the corporate lawyers, or anyone in power. Speaking up cost me my job, and a whole lot more. Frankly, I never imagined being fired from this company. I was. And it broke my heart to leave people and work that I loved. My best friends worked there. Life would never be the same. Before I go on, let me say this. I am enormously grateful for the 5 years that I spent with the people of Salem and Hope Creek. They taught me much. They inspired my best. And more than anything, they taught me what it is to be, and frankly, how to be, a leader worth following. Leading with brains, heart, courage, and integrity in the midst of chaos, controversy, and change. The last year has not been easy. I've had to make tough choices that came at a high price. I chose to not be silent about these safety concerns, even though PSEG refused to acknowledge them. In some people's eyes, I broke the code of silence and loyalty. I lost friendships that were dear to me. I felt alone and abandoned. And for a time, I questioned everything I had seen and heard. But I kept thinking about the people who still work there. And eventually, my fear and sadness turned to a deep resolve. I would keep speaking out. I would not be silent or silenced. No one or no thing would take away my voice. The people at Salem and Hope Creek and the public deserve my best, still. The technical and workplace issues, I believe, pose a significant threat to the people who work at Salem and Hope Creek, to each of us, to our loved ones and friends in nearby communities, and also to the millions who live in the tri-state area and actually pose a threat to the entire nuclear industry. I am telling my story today with the hope that it compels all of us to do our part to make Salem and Hope Creek a safe and great place to work. Now let me take you back in time. All we are is white noise. Please help us be heard. Those words were voiced to me on September 24th, 2002 by a Salem nuclear equipment operator. I will never forget him or those words. It is because of him and hundreds like him still working at PSEG Nuclear that I cannot be silent. When workers at a nuclear power plant have to beg, yell, and scream to be heard, especially about nuclear safety issues, and no one listens, something must be done.
Yeah!
These workers are the first line of defense when it comes to nuclear safety. From their vantage point of the control room or the plant, these hard-working people have a much keener sense of the issues than an overburdened manager or a big-picture-only officer sitting in his mahogany-laden office. I looked that gentleman straight in the eye and made him and his co-workers a promise. You will be heard. Your issues will be addressed, I promise. I left that late-night meeting concerned by what I had heard. A group of roughly 12 operators had told me that their boss's boss's boss had risked his personal safety to close a steam valve when none of them or the person in charge thought it was safe to do so. He did this, they said, so that the plant would not have to be shut down to fix the valve. They were angry that the production pressure had come to this. They went on to say that they didn't think PSEG management at the highest levels was truly committed to safety first, our motto. These gentlemen, these nuclear equipment operators, cited safety issue after safety issue being brought to management's attention without resolution. They named executives who said one thing and did another. They felt lied to, betrayed, unheard. One gentleman, usually a macho guy, stayed behind to talk with me. He had tears in his eyes and said, "I've been here a long, long time. I've never seen it this bad. You've got to help us." I believed I could help. After all, I worked directly for the chief nuclear officer and had been assigned to help solve problems in Salem operations. I figured all I needed to do was report these issues to the top dogs and they would respond appropriately. But when I relayed what had been told to me, I was chided for siding with the union. I was told I was being naive and played like a song. I was told those guys don't really care about safety. It's all a facade to get out of doing work. I was shocked. Something really was awry here. I was experiencing firsthand what the nuclear operators had told me. The top dogs weren't listening. They weren't interested in their workers' concerns. They had already decided it was nonsense. The bosses really did think the workers were the problem. Now what? I had promised those operators they would be heard. Their safety issues would be addressed. So I couldn't give up. I had given them my word, and my word means a lot to me. So I went to my boss, the President and Chief Nuclear Officer. His reaction shocked me even more. He too thought the workers were the problem, not their out-of-touch managers. I was angry, disheartened, and confused. I asked others for help. Here's what I heard. Those guys are a bunch of crybabies. Nothing ever satisfies them. It's a hornet's nest over there. Even though I heard these statements from colleagues I usually respected, I knew this time they were wrong. These guys, the ones telling me about their safety concerns, were sincere. I had looked each one in the eye. They weren't snowing me. They were genuinely afraid about the production at all costs pressure by the top brass, all the way up to the chairman of the board, they said. They feared that someone would be killed or seriously hurt or cause the NRC to shut the place down. It had happened before, on April 6, 1994, they told me. It was close to happening again, they said. I believed them. My gut said they were right. So I continued speaking up about these issues, increasing the pressure on my boss and others to take action instead of ignoring the safety concerns. I spoke of the growing rift between the guys with the licenses to run the reactors and senior management. I made it clear the rift was getting wider and had to be bridged. I actually thought things had a chance of improving when a vice president publicly chastised the management team, saying, "We don't come from safety, and the workers know far better than you or me." I publicly agreed with him and cited examples I had heard. I thought the tide was turning. It was, against me. I was called to the president's office to discuss my bonus. When I got there, he handed me a termination letter instead, saying my position was being eliminated. I was in shock. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him. Finally, I asked, "Why?" "It was only about reducing the numbers," he said. "No one is more dedicated than you." Having just months before been heralded for the difference I made at the site, I couldn't make sense of this. After the shock wore off, I began asking around. A high-level confidant, someone in the know, told me, point blank, "They are after you, and they are after others. Don't fight this. You'll be crucified if you do." Fight this? Of course I was going to fight this. My mission wasn't finished. My best friends worked here. I'm not just going to walk away. So I fought to retain my job. I called corporate headquarters in Newark. I went to the Employee Concerns Department. I even informed the chairman of the board about the illegal and retaliatory action taken against me, about workers not feeling heard about safety issues, and about leadership failings that I and others feared would take the plants down. The response? Further retaliation. I was forced out 3 days later on March 28th, 2003. I wonder if they knew it was the anniversary of TMI. What do you think? I suppose the company lawyers, the powers that be, and others thought I would forget about the workplace I left behind. But I could not. I had poured my heart and soul into the place. I loved the people that I worked with, and still do. They were some of the best and brightest anywhere. And I knew I had left promises undone, and that ate away at me. And all I kept hearing was, "All we are is white noise. Please help us be heard." But I didn't know what to do. I prayed for wisdom and guidance. As Providence would have it, I was invited to evaluate the operations departments at 3 top-rated nuclear plants. Within a day of being there, I realized how bad it was at Salem and Hope Creek. The contrast was astounding. When a safety issue was raised there, it was immediately handled. The person speaking up was not viewed as the problem. Workers were not asked to do unsafe things, as was often the case at PSEG. I had been blind to how bad it really was, and I quickly learned how much at risk the people at Salem and Hope Creek and the public really are. I hoped against hope that the independent safety investigation I had sparked at my departure would get real issues on the table. Guess what? It did not. In mid-August, I received an official letter from the company denying the issues I had cited. I knew a whitewash had ensued. The safety issues were real, but the letter said there weren't any. What little faith I had left in PSEG leadership evaporated. If the company was not of its own accord going to face up to the safety and work environment issues, then I had to do something. But I was scared. I had no desire to be a whistleblower, and I didn't want to get blackballed from the industry. And more than anything, I didn't want to hurt the good people at Salem and Hope Creek. I wanted the best for them then, and I want the best for them now. So I contemplated 4 choices: going to the NRC, congressional leaders, the media, and the courts. And after much soul searching, I chose to go to the NRC and later filed a civil complaint. My first meeting with the NRC team of investigators lasted 6 hours. I left drained and relieved. The safety issues I had worried about constantly were no longer secret or unknown. I urged the NRC to not accept my word alone, but to go straight to the managers and workers. And thankfully, the NRC promised extra oversight to be sure a nuclear event did not happen. It also launched a full-scale investigation. As word got out, current and former employees came forward. They verified my claims and offered more evidence. The NRC found enough awry to write, as an interim measure, an unprecedented public letter to the chairman of the board in January, demanding on-the-record answers about the work environment. Unfortunately, in its response, the company squandered its opportunity to come clean and put its safety and workplace issues on the table. Instead, it chose to present a viewpoint that the issues are declining, the work environment is getting better, and the new management team really has a handle on things. But that is not what I had heard from current employees, nor what the company's own recent survey results show. A close read reveals that the problems at Salem and Hope Creek are getting worse, not better. The new management team at the helm for nearly a year hasn't turned things around as promised. Many people still do not feel it is safe to speak up about safety issues. Fear, intimidation, and lip service still rule. The get it done, no matter what it takes, message still permeates. Salem and Hope Creek now have a safety culture worse than Davis-Besse or practically anyone else in the industry. Instead of focusing on safety issues, the new chief nuclear officer, who took over the day I left, chose to focus on cost-cutting and head chopping. This caused fear and distrust to skyrocket. And the survey results reveal how out of touch the chief nuclear officer and the senior staff are. They gave the site honor roll grades, while long-standing employees and outside experts gave failing grades to the site. So let me ask you, how can anyone fix a problem he does not see, or ignores, or lacks the will to face? The answer, of course, is that he cannot. That explains why conditions at Salem and Hope Creek got worse and worse this past year. No one seemed to notice until the NRC presented a mirror and said, "Look here." At the public meeting 10 days ago, as Dave said, PSCG officers admitted Salem and Hope Creek are nearly the bottom of the industry when it comes to a safety-conscious work environment. What they didn't say, however, was that they are responsible for this mess. Instead, previous management was blamed. However, 4 of the top 7 officers have been there for many years. They could have fixed these issues before they got this bad. They did not. In my view, these men are accountable for the poor safety conditions at Salem and Hope Creek and for the long-standing technical issues as well. PSCG's admission at the public meeting does give a glimmer of hope that things may improve, but I have learned this: hope is not a strategy. Much like an alcoholic finally admitting his drinking problem, PSEG may now have a chance to recover. But we all know the road to recovery is full of pitfalls. Few actually make it. And PSEG itself has stumbled off the safety wagon before. A willingness to be gut-level honest, to take full responsibility, to make amends, and to rely on others for support is what it will take. But that's a tall order for officers who have been rewarded for record-breaking profits at a time when the nuclear plants and people were languishing. Maybe you, like me, are wondering, why does the NRC allow these 3 reactors to operate with these well-known problems? As Dave said, last December, the NRC did not allow the Davis-Besse nuclear plant to restart until it had corrected its safety culture problems. Why isn't the same thing happening at Salem and Hope Creek? I don't understand why the NRC required both equipment and safety culture to be fixed at 1 reactor in Ohio, but allows 3 reactors in New Jersey to operate with equipment problems and equally serious, if not more serious, safety culture problems. Every day for the past year, I and many others have wondered if the problems at Salem and Hope Creek would lead to a nuclear accident. I and many others have wondered if someone would get killed there. I shuddered when that operator said to me, "It's a wonder there hasn't been an accident there worse than TMI. All the ingredients are sure lined up for that to happen." I'm asking for your help in fixing the problems at Salem and Hope Creek. I'm proposing 3 actions that each of us can take: those here today, those who work at Salem and Hope Creek, and those who hear about this via the media. First, join us in urging the NRC to wrap up its investigations of wrongdoing at PSEG and take enforcement action and remove those responsible. The NRC must also assure all safety problems are fixed. As a highly respected manager at the plant told me, no one ever holds the big guys accountable. It's time to prove him wrong. Current and former PSEG officers are responsible for not fixing the chilled work environment and for the lack of attention to safety issues of all types. If the NRC does not hold management, past and present, accountable, it is playing the role of enabler, allowing these bad managers to continue their bad behavior either at PSEG or other nuclear plants. In my opinion, and I hope yours, officers who have squandered the public trust and the trust of the people who work there don't deserve to be at the helm of any nuclear plant. They have paid lip service to their own safety-first message. They have attempted to deceive the NRC and have blamed the workers instead of looking in the mirror. They frankly have made the site weaker, not better. And they are not, as regulations require, reliable and trustworthy. It is time for them to exit the nuclear industry, not merely do the same thing at a different location. The PSEG Board of Directors should not wait for the NRC to act. Starting at the top of the enterprise, shareholders and the rest of us should insist that the board remove any officer who has contributed to PSEG Nuclear being in the bottom of the industry. Second, I ask that you join us in demanding that the NRC not allow the Hope Creek unit, which is currently in an outage, and the Salem Unit 1 unit, which starts an outage on Tuesday, to restart after these current outages, and take Salem 2 offline as well. The best way to demonstrate that safety truly is number one is to give 100% attention to fixing the long-standing equipment, the work management, and work environment issues. PSEG, give it 100% attention, not partial attention. Both PSEG and the NRC must get serious about solutions, not just the problems. I urge that the units not be allowed to operate until 3 conditions are met, until PSEG demonstrates strong stewardship, until PSEG managers and leaders at every level listen to and address workers' concerns, especially about safety and production issues, and until the deteriorated condition of safety systems and processes are fixed. So the units should not be allowed to operate until those conditions are met. Not allowing Davis-Besse to restart last December was the right thing to do, and this is the right thing to do now at Salem and Hope Creek, for the employees, for the public, and for our future generations. We cannot afford another TMI, another Chernobyl, or worse. And third, I ask that you join us in encouraging PSEG Nuclear employees, both management and union, to refuse to do anything that jeopardizes their own health and safety and the health and safety of the public. Refuse to lose your integrity, your dignity, your voice, or your life. As a wise friend of mine said, you can always get another job. You can't get another life. In closing, I believe the time has come for intervention by the PSEG Board of Directors in removing these officers, by the NRC in sanctioning and taking the keys away until this nuclear site is deemed safe, and by public officials, PSEG shareholders, and the rest of us. We must continue to speak up and speak out until the people of Salem and Hope Creek tell us they are safe, they are well led, and they are no longer white noise to the people in charge.
Yeah!
If you and I remain silent, if we do not act, if we simply go home and forget we ever heard this message, then we too are responsible for whatever happens at this nuclear facility. So please join in continuing to fight for safety at PSEG Nuclear. Promise me, promise yourself, and promise the good people of Salem and Hope Creek that you will stand with them, fight with them for safety first. Thank you very much.